The year is 2247 by the old Earth calendar, but no one uses that anymore. The Galactic Standard Year is 14,892, and the universe has grown small. Faster than light travel, universal translators, and the slow erosion of isolation have turned a billion scattered worlds into a single screaming conversation. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone has fought everyone. And everyone is very, very tired, except for Queen Vexera. She is not tired. She is hungry. She has always been hungry. The message arrived on every frequency at once. Not a broadcast in the traditional sense, more like a psychic pulse wrapped in electromagnetic radiation, wrapped in gravity waves, wrapped in pure, arrogant confidence. It bypassed encryption. It bypassed shields. It bypassed the fundamental laws of physics that lesser beings still pretended applied to her. I am Queen Vexera, last of the Tyranid matriarchs, ruler of the swarm that eclipses suns, consumer of the Keplean armada, devourer of the crystal mines of Xylos 7, and mother to 10 trillion hungry children. Her voice was not a voice. It was a resonance. It vibrated in the bones of every male creature across every galaxy within range, which was, unfortunately for them, all of them. For 3,000 of your standard years, I have conquered. I have consumed. I have grown fat on the fear of better beings than you, and I am bored. A pause. The kind of pause that precedes either a joke or an extinction event. So I issue this challenge. Any male from any species, warrior, priest, king, scientist, or simple beast, may face me in single combat. No weapons but those you grow or carry. No armies. No orbital bombardment. No clever tricks with black holes or time dilation. Just you. Just me. Just the sand and the silence and the scream. Her mandibles clicked once, twice, 3 times. A counting mechanism, a timer. If you defeat me, my swarm withdraws forever. I will take my children to the void between galaxies, and you will never see me again. Your species will survive. Your worlds will heal. Your children will grow old without the shadow of my hunger falling across their dreams. Another pause. This one tasted like acid. If you lose, and you will lose, I add your species to my genetic library. Every strength, every adaptation, every mutation that made you think you had a chance. I will weave your flesh into my children. I will sing your death songs at my feast, and your galaxy will be mine. The message ended. The silence that followed was the loudest sound in history. The Galactic Coliseum on Xylos Prime is a wonder of the ancient universe. No one knows who built it. The Xylosians found it when they evolved from silicon slime, and they have been using it ever since. It is a ring of living metal, 3 kilometers in diameter, floating in the atmosphere of a gas giant. The floor is made of nanite sand, billions of microscopic machines that can harden into any terrain, create any obstacle, simulate any environment. The walls are force fields and memory crystals, capable of recording every detail of every combat for eternity. The seats can hold 400 billion spectators via quantum projection. On the day of the first challenge, every seat was full. Warlord Gorthak the Unbreakable stepped onto the sand first. He was Crothy, a species of reptilian giants from the acidic swamps of Goran 9. He stood 12 feet tall. His scales were thick enough to deflect plasma bolts. His muscles had muscles. He carried an axe forged from the heart of a collapsed star, a weapon so dense that it warped gravity around it, making him look like a walking eclipse. He roared. The crowd roared back. The nanite sand hardened into a volcanic battlefield, complete with rivers of lava and falling ash. Queen Vexera descended from the ceiling. She did not walk onto the arena floor. She fell. A control drop from the central observation dome, 7 meters of chitin and fury, landing with an impact that cracked the nanite sand for 50 meters in every direction. She was beautiful in the way that a hurricane is beautiful, terrifying in the way that a black hole is terrifying, inevitable in the way that death is inevitable. Gorthak charged. His axe sang through the air, splitting atoms as it moved. The shock wave alone would have flattened the city. Vexera did not move. She extended one arm, a lazy, almost bored gesture, and let a tendril of acidic silk wrap around the axe's handle. The star metal screamed. The acid was not normal acid. It was a bioengineered solvent designed to dissolve the bonds between subatomic particles. The axe crumbled. Gorthak stumbled. His momentum carried him forward, off balance, directly into Vexera's open mouth. She did not chew. She did not need to chew. Her jaw unhinged like a snake's. Her throat expanded like a wormhole, and Gorthak the Unbreakable disappeared in a single swallow. The crowd went silent. Vexera belched. It sounded like a dying star. Next, she said. They came from every corner of the galaxy. They came from the Andromeda diaspora and the Triangulum refugees. They came from the core worlds and the fringe colonies, from a nebulae where silicon life dreamed in slow motion and the rogue planets where methane breathers hunted in eternal darkness. Zephyrion of the Seventh Mind was a Zylosian psychic, a being of pure consciousness wrapped in a fragile shell of crystalline flesh. He did not walk onto the arena floor. He floated. His mind reached out like a billion invisible fingers, searching for cracks in Vexera's thoughts. He found a memory of her childhood, a rare vulnerability. He projected a nightmare recursive loop, hoping to trap her in an infinite regression of fear. She absorbed his mind. She reverse-engineered his fears. She projected back the image of his own mother being devoured by his childhood pet, a detail she had extracted from his deepest, most protected neural vault. Zephyrion's brain liquefied in his skull. He collapsed without a mark on it. The crowd learned what silence sounded like when it was made of shock. Unit 734, Warform Omega, was a mechanoid prime from the Cygnus Collective. It was not alive in the organic sense. It was a walking tank of adaptive alloys, plasma cannons, and quantum processing cores. It calculated 17 million combat strategies before the match began. It simulated every possible outcome. It determined that victory was statistically impossible, but logically mandatory. Vexera simply grew faster. She moved in the gaps between its targeting frames, the infinitesimal spaces between its processor cycle. She peeled its armor like an orange. She drank the coolant from its core. Unit 734 beeped once, a sound of confused surrender, and powered down forever. The Mechanoid Collective filed a formal protest. Vexera ate their ambassador. The Nigh Assassin came next. He could teleport. He could phase through solid matter. He had killed 17 planetary governors, 2 emperors, and a sentient star. He appeared behind Vexera, inside her own shadow, and drove a poison blade toward her primary nerve cluster. She had grown a second nerve cluster in the time it took him to teleport. The blade struck chitin. The poison was absorbed. The assassin found himself wrapped in silk, cocooned, and stored for later consumption. The crowd heard his muffled screams for 3 hours before they stopped. A living storm from the gas giant ether. 9. Ascension hurricane with lightning for blood and thunder for a voice. It tried to dissolve Vexera into plasma. She opened her mouth and drank the storm. She absorbed its electrical charge. She used it to power her own bioluminescence. For the next week, she glowed like a small sun. She said it was the best meal she had had in centuries. A hive-minded collective of 1 trillion microscopic drones, each one too small to see, together forming a consciousness vast enough to calculate the movement of every atom in the arena. They tried to consume her from the inside out, burrowing through her chitin, replicating in her bloodstream. She digested them, all trillion. She used their biomass to grow a 13th limb. She named it Snack. The list grew. The bodies piled up. The crowd's hope curdled into despair and then hardened into a numb, resigned acceptance. This was not a competition. This was an execution. Queen Vexera was not looking for a worthy opponent. She was looking for a reason to feel something other than hunger. After 3 standard weeks, the Colosseum's attendance had dropped by 2/3. The other third stayed out of morbid fascination. The same impulse that makes creatures slow down and look at car accidents. The same impulse that made ancient humans watch gladiators die in the sand. They were watching death become an art form. They were watching boredom become a weapon. And then the human arrived. His name was Elias Vance. He was 34 years old by Earth standards. He stood 5 feet and 9 inches tall. He weighed 148 pounds. His blood pressure was slightly elevated due to a lifelong fondness for salty snacks. His most impressive physical achievement was walking from one end of a colony ship to the other without getting lost. He was a cartographer, not a warrior, not a strategist, not a psychic or a cyborg or a genetically engineered super soldier. He drew maps. He charted frontier colonies, mapped trade routes, documented the topography of planets that no one would ever visit. He was good at his job, patient, meticulous, capable of spending 12 hours shading a mountain range without getting bored. But he had never thrown a punch in anger. He had never fired a weapon outside of a safety course. The most dangerous thing he had ever done was eat street food from a vendor with a questionable hygiene rating. When he stepped onto the arena floor, the Colosseum did not laugh. It was beyond laughter. It was in the realm of confused disbelief. "Is that a human?" asked the Xylosian commentator. "It appears to be," replied a Crothy analyst. "Small, soft, no visible weapon, no visible armor, no visible anything, really. His heart rate is elevated, but not significantly. His pupil dilation suggests mild anxiety, but not terror. He is not sweating. Perhaps he is suicidal. Perhaps he is stupid." The nanite sand, confused by the lack of threat, remained flat and featureless, a smooth gray plain stretching from the arena's edge to the central platform where Vexera waited. Elias walked across it at a leisurely pace. He did not run. He did not charge. He walked the way a person walks to a mailbox, routine, unhurried, unremarkable. Vexera watched him come. Her 6 eyes tracked his movements with the lazy attention of a cat watching a mouse that is too small to bother eating. She was disappointed. She had hoped for something interesting, a desperate last stand, a clever trick, a noble sacrifice, something to break the monotony of endless victory. Instead, she got a pink mammal in a worn jacket. "Stop," she said. Elias stopped. He was 20 meters away, close enough to see the individual facets of her compound eyes, close enough to smell the faint acidic tang of her breath, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her massive body. "Are you lost, little mammal?" she asked. Her voice was tired now. The theatrical resonance was gone. This was just a queen talking to a snack. "Did you wander in here by accident? Did you think this was a cafeteria?" Elias did not laugh. He did not tremble. He did not deliver a heroic one-liner. He simply looked at her, really looked at her, the way he looked at a landscape he was about to map. He took in the curve of her mandibles, the pattern of her bioluminescent veins, the subtle asymmetry of her chitinous plates. He noticed things that warriors never noticed. He noticed that her left eye twitched slightly. He noticed that her tail curled at the tip, not in aggression, but in something like uncertainty. "No," he said. "I'm not lost." "Then why are you here?" "Because I wanted to meet you." The Colosseum went absolutely silent. 300 billion beings leaned forward in their quantum-projected seats. Even the nanite sand seemed to hold its breath. Vexera's mandibles clicked, once, twice, a tell that Elias had noticed in the recordings of her previous battles. She was confused, not angry, not hungry, confused. "Meet me," she repeated. "You traveled across the galaxy. You walked onto an arena where 17 champions have died. You faced a devourer of galaxies to meet me." "Yes. Why?" Elias took a slow breath. He did not step forward. He did not step back. He stayed exactly where he was, rooted in the sand like a small, unremarkable tree. "Because no one else has asked you the right question," he said. Vexera's tail uncurled. Her mandibles stopped clicking. For the first time in 3,000 years, she did not know what to say. She had prepared for begging. She had prepared for screaming. She had prepared for desperate lunges and clever traps and noble sacrifices. She had not prepared for a small mammal who wanted to ask her a question. "What question?" she heard herself say. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. She hated that. Elias tilted his head. "Why are you really here?" "I told you. I am bored. I am hungry. I am looking for her." "No," Elias interrupted, gently, not like a challenge, like a correction. "That's what you're doing. Not why. Why are you here? Why did you cross the void between galaxies? Why did you build a swarm? Why did you consume 17 civilizations? Why are you standing on this sand, killing everyone who walks onto it, waiting for something you can't name?" Vexera's lower eyes began to leak. She did not understand what was happening. Her species did not cry. They had no tear ducts, no emotional tear response, no evolutionary reason for liquid to escape from their eyes. And yet, a thin, iridescent fluid was seeping from her lower eye sockets, catching the arena lights, scattering them into tiny rainbows, dripping down her chitinous cheeks and sizzling on the hot sand. She reached up with one massive claw and touched the fluid, stared at it, did not understand. "What is this?" she whispered. "That's grief," Elias said. "Or maybe relief. Or maybe just the truth finally finding a way out. I don't know. I'm a cartographer, not a therapist. You're not afraid of me." It was not a question. It was an observation. A stunned, bewildered observation. "No," Elias said. "I'm not." "Why?" "Because fear is a response to a threat. And you're not a threat to me." He paused. "Let that sink in. You could kill me. Easily. Instantly. I have no delusions about that. But you won't. Not because you're merciful, because you're lonely. And killing me would make you more lonely. And you are so tired of being lonely. Vexera's massive body shuddered. The chitinous plates along her spine rippled. Her tail wrapped around her own leg, a self-comforting gesture she had not performed since she was a larva in the brood womb, hiding from her cannibalistic sister. You don't know anything about me, she said. But her voice cracked on the last word. It cracked because she knew he was right. She knew because no one had ever said it out loud before, and the sound of it, the simple, undeniable truth of it, was hitting her like a physical blow. I know you were the last hatched, Elias said quietly. I know your sisters ate each other in the brood womb. I know you survived because you hid, not because you were the strongest, because you were the most afraid. Vexera's breath caught. A sound escaped her, something between a hiss and a sob. No one knew that. No one had ever known that. She had never told anyone. She had buried that memory so deep that she had almost convinced herself it wasn't real. How? She started. I watched the recordings of your battles, Elias said. Every one. 17 of them. I watched how you move, how you fight, how you kill. But I also watched the small thing, the way you flinch when someone attacks from behind, the way you guard your lower abdomen even though it's armored, the way you never, ever let anyone get close to your left side. He took a single step forward, still not threatening, still just present. You fight like someone who learned to survive by hiding in corners and watching her sisters die. You're not a conqueror, Queen Vexera. You're a scared child who got very, very good at pretending. The Colosseum erupted, not in applause, not in laughter, in chaos. 300 billion beings, across 1,000 species, 1,000,000 worlds, 100,000 cultures, began arguing simultaneously. Some were outraged, some were confused, some were weeping, some were screaming that the human had to be stopped, that he was clearly using some kind of psychic attack, that no one could speak to a tyrannid matriarch like that and survive. But Vexera did not attack. She stood frozen on the arena floor, her 6 eyes wide, her mandibles hanging slack, her massive body trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. The iridescent fluid was flowing freely now, not just from her lower eyes, but from all 6, a cascade of liquid light pouring down her face and pooling on the sand. I don't understand, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. The harmonic resonance was gone. The theatrical boom was gone. She sounded like what she was, a very old, very tired, very confused creature who had just been told something she had spent 10,000 years running away from. You don't have to understand, Elias said. You just have to stop running. I'm not running. I'm the devourer. I'm the queen. You're a creature who has never had a conversation that didn't end in death, Elias said. You've never had a friend. You've never had an equal. You've never had anyone look at you and see anything other than a monster or a meal. And you are so desperately, painfully lonely that you would rather eat the entire galaxy than admit it. Vexera's legs buckled. 7 meters of chitin and fury. The swarm that eclipses suns, the consumer of 17 civilizations, the nightmare of 1 billion worlds, collapsed on a nanite sand like a puppet with cut strings. She did not fall gracefully. She fell like a building collapsing, all at once, without dignity, without control. Her massive head hit the sand. Her 6 eyes stared up at the ceiling of the Colosseum. Her mandibles moved, but no sound came out. The iridescent fluid mixed with the sand, turning it into a glowing paste. Elias walked toward her, slowly, calmly. He stopped when he was close enough to touch her, close enough that her mandibles could have snapped him in half without moving. He sat down on the sand, cross-legged, and looked at her. I'm not going to fight you, he said. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to capture you or humiliate you or use you for political gain. I'm just going to sit here. And if you want to talk, I'll listen. And if you want to be quiet, I'll be quiet with you. And if you want to cry, or whatever the tyrannid equivalent of crying is, I'll sit here while you do it. Vexera stared at him. Her mind, the vast, ancient, hyper-intelligent mind that had conquered galaxy, was completely blank. She had no protocol for this, no strategy, no contingency. She had spent 10,000 years preparing for every possible attack, and no one had ever attacked her like this. Why? She whispered. Because everyone deserves to be seen, Elias said. Even monsters, especially monsters. Because most monsters aren't born. They're made. And somewhere underneath all that chitin and hunger and rage, there's just a creature who wanted to be loved and didn't know how to ask. The Colosseum's crowd had gone silent. Not the silence of shock or confusion. the silence of witnessing something sacred. 300 billion beings watched a small human sit on the sand next to a weeping alien queen, and no one knew what to call what they were seeing. The Nanite Sand responded to some unknown command, perhaps from Vexera herself, perhaps from the Colosseum's ancient system, perhaps from a universe's innate sense of narrative justice. Softened. The hard combat grid melted away. Flowers began to grow. Not real flowers. The nanites were not capable of true biology, but simulations of flowers, glowing blue and gold and silver, pushing up to the sand and blooming in the light. Elias reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He unfolded it and held it up. It was a map, not of stars or planets or trade routes. It was a map of a garden, a small, quiet garden on a human colony world called New Eden. Elias had drawn it himself years ago during his first solo survey mission. He had sat in the middle of that garden for 3 days, just watching the local insects pollinate the flowers, and he had drawn every leaf, every petal, every shadow. "This is the most valuable thing I own," he said. "Not because it's worth money, because it represents a moment when I wasn't trying to be anything. I wasn't a cartographer. I wasn't a human. I wasn't a male or a female or a warrior or a coward. I was just there, present, not conquering, not surviving, just existing in a world that didn't need me to be anything other than what I was." He held the map out toward her. "I want you to have it." Vexera's massive claw reached out. The claws, each one longer than Elias's arm, each one capable of tearing through starship armor, trembled as they gently pinched the corner of the paper. She brought it close to her central eyes. She studied the lines, the shading, the tiny note in the corner. "For anyone who needs to remember what peace feels like, this is a garden," she said. Her voice was still small, still raw, but there was something new in it, something that sounded like wonder. "Yes, you sat in it for 3 days. Yes, you drew it because you wanted to remember it. Yes, and you kept it for years so you could give it to someone who needed it." Elias shrugged. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Vexera's mandibles twitched. It took Elias a moment to realize what he was seeing. She was smiling, not a predator's smile, the baring of teeth before a kill. A real smile, an awkward, unpracticed, almost painful smile that looked like it hadn't been used in 10,000 years. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "Do what?" "Be seen. Be not a queen. Be not a monster. Be just a creature sitting in a garden." "That's okay," Elias said. "You don't have to know how. You just have to be willing to try." The Galactic Coliseum declared Elias Vance the victor by unanimous consensus, not because he had defeated Vexera in combat. He had not thrown a single punch, not fired a single shot, not even raised his voice, but because he had done something that no warrior, no psychic, no god or demon or machine had managed in 10,000 years. He had made the queen stop fighting. The swarm did not withdraw immediately. It could not. 10 trillion children, each one connected to Vexera's mind, each one built for consumption and conquest. They could not simply unlearn their nature overnight, but they changed, slowly, awkwardly, the way a predator learns to be a gardener. The first sign was the flowers, on the worlds that the swarm had conquered, the worlds where Vexera's children had stripped the soil and drunk the oceans. The swarm began to plant, not crops for consumption, flowers, gardens, living things that served no purpose other than to exist and be beautiful. The second sign was the silence. The swarm stopped screaming. For 10,000 years, the telepathic background noise of the Tyranid race had been a constant, psychic shriek of hunger and rage. Now, slowly it faded. In its place was something softer, something that sounded, if you listened closely, like curiosity. The third sign was Vexera herself. She left the Colosseum. She left her throne. She left her swarm, not forever, but for a while. She followed Elias Vance to a small, unimportant planet called New Eden. She sat in his garden. She watched the insects pollinate the flowers. She felt the sunlight on her chitin. She learned, for the first time in her existence, what it felt like to not be hungry. Elias went back to making maps. But now, in the corner of each one, he drew a small flower, a reminder that even in the vast, cold darkness of space, there were places worth protecting, and beings worth talking to, and victories that looked nothing like victory. Epilogue: The Garden. 3 years later, a small human child on New Eden asked her mother why the big alien monster in the garden never ate anyone. The mother looked out the window. Vexera was sitting among the flowers, all 7 meters of her, curled up like a cat, her 6 eyes closed, her mandibles relaxed, her tail wrapped around a small tree. A tyrannid larva, one of her children, was digging in the dirt with its tiny claws, planting seeds that would never be eaten. "She's not a monster anymore, sweetheart," the mother said. "What is she?" The mother thought about it. She thought about the stories she had heard, the 17 champions, the consumed civilizations, the terror that had swept across the galaxy. She thought about the small, soft human who had walked onto an arena and refused to fight. She thought about the map in the corner of every frontier colony's welcome center, a map of a garden with a tiny flower in the corner, and the words, "For anyone who needs to remember what peace feels like." "She's a friend," the mother said. "Just a friend." The child nodded, satisfied, and went back to her toys. Outside, in the garden, Vexera opened her eyes. She looked at the human child through the window. She did not feel hunger. She did not feel rage. She felt something she had no name for, something soft and warm and terrifying in an entirely new way. She reached out with one massive claw and touched the flower. The flower did not wilt. It bloomed. For the first time in 10,000 years, Queen Vexera was not hungry. She was home.